Love, Tua Tagovailoa. They both got contract extensions on Friday. News came out about it at the same time. Now, me and Josh disagree on one of these quarterbacks. We, I think, agree on the other in terms of what they are worth in value. So, where do you want to start, Josh?
I mean, is Tua really worth that much? Or is it just because of the parts around him?
Well, here's the issue with Tua, and we talked about this when we talked about Trevor Lawrence. Um, I think Miami is handicapped, and I think Miami is stuck because you have this excellent roster with maybe two of the best five-ish potential receivers in the league. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Waddle's probably closer to 10 than 5, but with Tyreek, he's certainly very productive. You have a great offensive coach in Mike McDaniel. And when you're in warm weather and when you're in a warm climate, Tua can play like a top five quarterback in the league. The issue is when he's outside the cold weather, when it's November, when it's December, and you got to go to Cincinnati, and you got to go to Cleveland, and you got to go to Pittsburgh, and you got to go to Kansas City, and you got to go to Buffalo, and you got to go to New York. You get my drift. That's when the Miami Dolphins typically do struggle. And for that reason, I don't know because I think you had to pay Tua. But again, I think it's the Trevor Lawrence situation where it's like if we don't pay Tua, we're stuck. But he is not worth that value.
I kind of view Tua in the same way I view Brock Purdy out in San Francisco, where is Brock Purdy actually that good? Or is it just that he has Christian McCaffrey, Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle? It's the same way in Miami, where Tua has Jalen Waddle. He's got Tyreek Hill. He's got all those running backs. He's got a great offensive line. So is it that Tua is that good of a quarterback, or is he just like better because of the parts around him? I don't know the answer.
To your point, you remember Tua Tagovailoa was drafted in the COVID draft. That same draft class had the likes of Joe Burrow. It had Justin Herbert. It had in the second round Jalen Hurts. It had Jordan Love, who we're going to talk about here in a second. But if you remember, then head coach of the Miami Dolphins, Brian Flores, did not want Tua Tagovailoa. And in Tua's rookie year, he was being benched for Ryan Fitzpatrick. It was very weird handling of Tua. They got hot at the end of the year. Then they didn't make the playoffs. They go on and they bring in Mike McDaniel, who nobody really ever heard of at the time. Turns out he's this offensive genius. 2 years ago was the year where Tua suffered that concussion, and we all watched on that Thursday night when he fell over against the Bengals. And, there was conversations in the sports media world about should Tua play football again. And then we go to last year where Tua, in my opinion, by all accounts, had his best year as a pro. He was very good, but he wasn't good when it counted. Again, he wasn't good in the cold weather. The Dolphins were not good in the cold weather. Now, they had a lot of injuries, specifically on the defense side of the ball, that kind of fell apart at the end of the year. I understand why you want to get the quarterback deal done because, again, Trevor Lawrence makes this amount, Tua is going to make X amount. It's just going to go up and up and up. But I would have liked to give Tua one more year. And I said it at the time of the draft. And I know Atlanta took this guy with the eighth overall pick. But if he was available at Miami's mid round pick, which I think they had like 15 or 16, I would have considered Michael Penix in the first round because I don't know if Tua is the franchise quarterback yet.
If Michael Penix had gotten past Atlanta, he wouldn't have gotten past the Raiders. So I don't think he would have been available for the Dolphins anyway.
You're probably right, but is there a world where the Raiders don't draft him? If Brock Bowers is still on the board, does Vegas still take him? I don't know, right? It's a lot of what ifs. We don't know that situation. I'm
I
just
mean,
saying, if he was,
you look at the Raiders, their starting quarterback this season is either going to be Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew.
yeah, and they have a problem that they need to address. And obviously, there was a lot of negotiating, I think, around Penix, and teams were trying to move up. I get it. I'm just saying, if I was Miami, I would have considered him if he was there. I don't think Miami did any extensive scouting on quarterbacks. Is kind of my point. They've come out, they've said who was their guy, and they are betting at this point that Tua Tagovailoa is healthy moving forward, which we've only again seen one healthy season.
Yeah. Um, And I think part of the reason why Tua got so much hype coming out of Alabama is because of what he did in that national championship game against Georgia, coming in the second half and leading them to a game-winning drive that won the national championship.
Yeah, remember he did the opposite of Jalen Hurts. Remember, the first year, Tua comes in, or excuse me, Hurts comes in and replaces Tua. The next year, obviously, Tua comes in and replaces Hurts. Um, but Tua had a reputation coming out of Alabama that same thing as sort of his brother who just finished up college at uh, Maryland, that they are very accurate quarterbacks. And that has been true. When Tua is out in the pocket, when he's comfortable, he's accurate. He can be very good. Sometimes quarterbacks need more weapons around them. They can't be a Patrick Mahomes. They can't be a Josh Allen. They can't be a Joe Burrow, right? And carry the franchise. I don't think Tua is this guy that you can stick him with a defensive coach or bad weapons. But I think right now he's in the right situation, and Miami is paying the right side of the ball. They're paying two receivers, they're paying a quarterback, and they're paying their coach. And as long as you have that infrastructure in place, we all know Super Bowls are the goal. We all know Super Bowls are very hard to win. I'm just saying, in the next 4 to 5 years, if you're telling me Tua is staying healthy, then I think the Dolphins are going to be, perennial playoff contenders year in and year out.
The problem with the Dolphins, though, is in order for them to legitimately have a chance to get to the Super Bowl, they need to have home field advantage. They need that number one seed because we saw, like, they can't go into Kansas City when it's freezing cold and do anything. They looked like a completely different team. If they had won that Week 18 Sunday night game against Buffalo, they would have won the division. They would have been the number 2 seed. Yes, they still would have had to theoretically go to Baltimore for the AFC Championship if that's how things would have played out. But at least they would have had home field advantage in the wild card round and in the divisional round.
Well, and I think Miami is banking on that this year will be a better year for them and that they can win the division. As you know, I don't think that's the case, and I do think that Tua right now is the third best quarterback in their division, which is always going to be hard to win the division.
I would still say he's the second best quarterback, but in the
So
division,
you would take him over Rodgers right now. A healthy Aaron, I think, is better than Tua.
how many snaps did Aaron Rodgers take last year? Just remind me.
Four.
There
But
you go.
again, it goes back to 2 years ago. We had a question of should Tua ever play football again?
But you got to go
So,
off of what have you done for me lately?
yeah, I know what Aaron Rodgers has done lately, and that includes having a bounce back year this year. I can tell you if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, he's still a top 10 quarterback.
We shall see about that. But we got to get to the guy that replaced Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. And I know you are not sold on him. You, for some reason, you still believe Chicago's going to be ahead of Green Bay in this NFC North standings, which I think is poppycock.
You think that's absolutely? You think there's zero chance of happening? You want to bet another bottle of Dr Pepper on that? Because I'm willing to go there.
Let's get to that when we get to the season predictions.
Okay, fair enough. Let me clarify my stance on Jordan Love. I don't think he's trash. I don't think he's bad. I actually like Jordan Love. All I'm saying is what you said about Brock Purdy and Tua Tagovailoa, which is I need to see more. And the reason why I need to see more is twofold. Number one, nobody in the world will remember this but me because it involves my alma mater, the Golden Flashes, Kent State University. You know what Jordan Love's last college game was, Mr. Unger, in 2020 when he was a member of Utah State? he got outdueled by a guy that I don't even know if you know his name. His name is Dustin Crum. He was an undrafted quarterback out of Kent State who ended up going to the Chiefs undrafted, who cut him, and he was in the fan controlled football league. He threw for 450 yards in that bowl game in 2020. Kent State defeated Utah State in that game, and Dustin Crum outdueled Jordan Love in that game. Fast forward then, we heard for 3 years about how Jordan Love was supposed to be the heir apparent for Aaron Rodgers. Yet we barely saw any practice footage of Jordan Love, and we did not hear any reporting out of Green Bay Packer camp. Jordan Love is the next guy. Jordan Love is ready. Why didn't they move on from Aaron Rodgers? Like we heard in Kansas City when Patrick Mahomes was there and Alex Smith was obviously there. We kept hearing reports out of Kansas City. Just wait. Just wait. Mahomes is going to take over the week. You're not ready for it. We didn't hear that out of Green Bay and Jordan Love. We'd watch him in preseason against third string defenses when you are supposed to succeed, struggle. Then we go to last year, where Green Bay was projected by all accounts to finish either second or third in the division. Some people had them behind Minnesota, depending on the type of quarterback play they got out of Kirk Cousins. And at 3-6, going into Thanksgiving against the Detroit Lions, everybody pretty much thought the Packers season was over. They got blown out by the Lions in week 4. Jordan Love was seen as a guy that, maybe you give him one more year, you give him more weapons, etc. And they just came out, and for whatever reason, it clicked. And Green Bay caught fire, and we've seen wild card teams do this in the past. Jordan Love did only have one interception the rest of the year, and I give you that up until obviously the divisional round game against San Francisco, where he did have a chance. But all I'm saying is, when I look at Green Bay's roster, and I look at everybody else's roster in the division, I don't think they have a better roster overall than Detroit, and I don't think they have a better roster overall than Chicago. Now, if Jordan Love this year can go out and they can win 10, 11 games, if they can win the division, I will acknowledge Jordan Love and says that he needs to get paid. But to go up basically an 8-game sample size where he went from, again, in his own coach's words, a guy who probably was not ready to start, to being a top 5 quarterback in the league, we've never seen anything like it. And I'll have one more thing, and then I'll let you counter. In the NFL, progression is not linear. We've seen guys get hot and then go very cold. We've seen guys get hot and then get out of the league. We've seen guys go cold and then they get hot and their career takes off. I just don't know yet which Jordan Love I am getting consistently from week 1 to week 18.
Okay. Before last season, had you heard of the likes of Luke Musgrave, the Packers tight end, Romeo Doubs, one of their wide receivers? Had you heard of any of these guys?
Yes, because they were both there with Aaron his last year. Remember Christian Watson? Remember the first pass Aaron Rodgers threw to Christian Watson? Hit him right in the hands, and Watson dropped it. All of those young talent came in with Rodgers during his last year in Green Bay.
And when did they really come into their own? When who took over as quarterback?
The back half of last year, Jordan Love. And let me say this. Part of that has to do with youth and age, because we know Aaron Rodgers is prickly. We know he's moody. We know he doesn't love young guys. Jordan Love worked more with those guys when Aaron Rodgers wasn't at training camp. Jordan Love is younger in age to those guys. He can relate better. So we all knew those guys were going to get better throughout the season. Now, again, did they get better quicker than we thought? Possibly, yes. But I need to see it more over a full game sample size, where now teams have spent the whole offseason studying tape on the Green Bay Packers.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. The Packers now have a season under their belt with Jordan Love as their quarterback in this offense. That back half of the season, as you discussed, Jordan Love went like this, and he started to figure it out with his offense. You go over to Chicago, rookie quarterback, bunch of new weapons. Is it going to click right away? I don't know. So that also tips the scales in Green Bay's favor, does it not?
I actually do agree with you a little bit that it could be a slow start. However, I think that Bears team is absolutely loaded. And I don't put much stock at all in the guys running around in shorts in training camp, because you're not really going full speed. But have you seen the videos that have come out of Chicago? It is wow. There was one throw that Caleb Williams made that I promise you only one person in the National Football League could make, and it's his top, Patrick Mahomes. He was rolling to his left and literally threw right-handed across his body the opposite way, like Patrick. I said, that's Mahomes. I watched him and I said, that's Mahomes. And if he is in command, and I think this Hard Knocks is going to tell us a lot. I can't wait for this to start next week. If Caleb Williams is who we think he is, absolutely the Bears on paper have a better roster than the Green Bay Packers, and they will at least match them in win total, is my prediction. By the way, I think we're all forgetting about Minnesota in this division because they're going to absolutely win games, right? I mean, is there a world out there? I'm not saying it's going to happen. All I'm saying is 2 years ago, we had something we never thought we'd seen before. Geno Smith, after sitting on the bench for 5 years, came out of nowhere and resurrected his career with Seattle. Last year, everybody thought Tampa Bay was going to tank. Their roster traded a lot of pieces. Todd Bowles was going to get fired. Baker Mayfield led them to the playoffs. This year, all I'm saying is with those weapons, that person could be Sam Darnold.
It depends on how long of a leash the Vikings give him. That's the problem.
They're giving him the whole season. I have changed my tune on this, but from everything that I've read and heard on the Minnesota camp, Sam Darnold is the undisputed number one starter.
So they're not even giving J.J. McCarthy a chance.
Not this year. He will get time and reps, but he's going to basically be the third string quarterback. He's going to be what Jordan Love was his rookie year in Green Bay. You remember he wasn't even the backup.
Yeah, I do remember that. But when Jordan Love got his opportunity, yes, it took him a little bit longer, but he made the most of it, did he not?
He did. All I'm saying is you're going off 8 successful games and you're going to pay him more than Patrick Mahomes' money. I'm not comfortable with that right now.
That's part of the problem, though. Everybody's comparing these giant contracts to the little amount Patrick Mahomes is making.
Well, again, it's like, can I stomach paying Dak Prescott $60 million? Personally, I probably can, but am I going to have to? Yes. I think the difference here is Green Bay has sort of a runway, I would say, with their franchise. They've gone from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to potentially Jordan Love seamlessly, where Green Bay fans can even tell you they didn't think Jordan Love was going to work out the way. They kind of thought last year was going to be a rebuilding year. So basically all I'm saying is you had no pressure, in my opinion, to pay Jordan Love right now. Because if he had a little bit of a sophomore slump, if you will, even though it'd be his fifth year in the league, you wouldn't have to pay him all this money. That is all I'm saying.
Well, here's the thing, though. Jordan Love's contract was coming up, so they kind of had to pay him.
He was, but you and I both know that if he would have had a good season, Green Bay would have extended him. They're not letting him go into free agency.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing with Tua in Miami. Like, the Dolphins basically were in a position where they had to pay Tua.
Again, yes, but is it going to be worth it in the long run? I think we shall see on that. I don't know if that's the case for either one of these guys, but I think they're both kind of stuck. Now, I think Jordan Love has a better chance to succeed than Tua because of the conference he's in, though, again, that could depend. I think Jaden Daniels and the Commanders are going to have a really good year this year. I think the NFC is going to be better, at least in the middle to the top, than what it has been during the past couple of years. But the AFC is still better.
Yes, the AFC is still the premier conference in the NFL.
It is. I guess what I'm trying to say is that this is more of our predictions that we'll get to, obviously. August 28th, when we come back here on Championship Rings. The NFC, there's going to be a couple bottom feeders, but there's not going to be like 5 or 6 or 7 bottom feeders like there has been the past couple of years, in my opinion.
I think I can figure out who a couple of the bottom feeders are going to be already.
Well, one of them is a guy who apparently is trying to convince the New York Giants to sign him back, named Tommy DeVito. So
Oh,
there's
God.
one. I will give you that all day.